Hey everyone, welcome to Cinema Safari. Today we're going to be talking about superhero movies that were released this year. There were four major releases between Marvel and DC. We're also going to be talking about some of the future releases going into the next year or two, as well as what we're looking forward to with just the future of both franchises. And also talking about the question, is superhero fatigue a real thing? Some of the factors driving that question into some of the releases that came out this year, and going back maybe a year or two with some releases as well. And yeah, I'm just excited to get into it and talk about all these factors and some of the superhero movies that were released. So we had four major superhero releases this year combined between Marvel and DC, with the first one being Captain America Brave New World back in February. It released on February 11th or 14th, with 11th as its premiere at the Chinese Theater in Hollywood. And in that movie, we saw Anthony Mackie finally take on the mantle of Captain America. Kind of a sequel to the Falcon and Winter Soldier series that was released on Disney Plus about a year or two ago. And then we also saw Daniel Ramirez return from the show, taking up the mantle as the new Falcon. And pretty good cast. We saw Liv Tyler and Tim Blake Nelson returning to the MCU for the first time since their appearances in The Incredible Hulk back in 2008. And of course, Harrison Ford taking on the role of Thunderbolt Ross after the sad passing of William Hurt, who played the role in the MCU for about a decade between The Incredible Hulk and his last appearance, I believe, in Endgame. And a lot of people, when we saw the movie, a lot of people agreed it felt basically like just a sequel to The Incredible Hulk, because you have Tim Blake Nelson coming back, he plays the leader, a lot of connections to that film. Of course, Harrison Ford becomes the Red Hulk in the film, which a lot of people were kind of upset in the trailer because they didn't keep it a secret, which would have been a cool thing to have. But you kind of saw that that's what they were going for, so even if they kept it out of the trailers, I don't think it would have made too much of a difference, too big of an impact when we saw the movie. So it was basically a sequel to The Incredible Hulk without actually having the Hulk in it. I think a lot of people were expecting, I don't know, like a lot of people I talked to weren't like super enthusiastic for the film compared to some other future releases. But they do, the one part I think people did agree on was Anthony Mackie deserved his time, like his time to have a leading role, and I think he did pretty well for the most part. Just what he had to work with was tricky, especially after taking the mantle over from Chris Evans, who played the role for so many years, to very positive critical and fan support. So it was a hard thing to do. For the most part, I think he did pretty well in it. And going forward, I know the role is really important to him. He really likes the role and appreciates it. So it'll be very interesting to see how he develops the character moving forward with Avengers and potentially any films beyond that. Next, we had The Thunderbolts, which released on May 2nd for its wide release. It grossed $382 million against a $180 million budget. So pretty much every film to this point might have broken even, but Thunderbolts I don't think broke even, or it was very close. All these films had very high budgets this year compared to some other films in the past. But Thunderbolts was, I think, pretty much it got very positive reviews compared to Captain America, which got a lot more mixed reviews and one of the lower rated films in the MCU. Thunderbolts, very positive feedback from critics and fans. A lot of people said it might have been the best MCU film since like Endgame and like pre-Endgame dates. Like it was that good. A lot of people thought, and I definitely agree. It had the formula of closer to like those older films and how they worked well and how they succeeded and why they were so popular. And that's one of the things I think worked well. And I think going forward in the MCU, if we see that formula sticking with some of the future films, it'll get back on track and maybe draw in some more fan support from people who might have grown tired of the franchise. And that's one of the big things I do want to get into today is the question of, are we having superhero fatigue? Or are we just getting poorly made movies? Or rushed movies, I should say. With Thunderbolts, we saw a very stacked cast, returning characters from the previous media in the franchise. Florence Pugh, of course, leads the Thunderbolts, leads the cast. Sebastian Stan, the longest tenured cast member, I think, in the MCU, who shows up in this film, who kind of gets them together to form the group. Wyatt Russell, of course, Olga Kurylenko, Louis Pullman, of course, David Harbour, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, Hannah John Kraman. Great cast, very, very talented cast, and they did really well. I thought they did really well. They worked really well together. They had good chemistry, I thought. It was kind of like the Suicide Squads in a sense, like kind of that, like a ragtag team getting together. Or I guess like more like the Guardians maybe. But I thought they did really well, and they had great chemistry, and they know these characters well. They played these characters before, and they have a really good sense of how these characters should be. And I thought that was one aspect of the film that was also great, because they know who the characters are, they know how to play the characters. They have been developing characters for a while, most of them, and that really helped make the movie, I think, stronger. But also, we have that formula for the Thunderbolts, which was very closer to the older formula for some of the earlier MCU films, which I said a little while ago. And I think that was another thing that made the movie so well. Why it didn't do great at the box office, we have had, it came right after Captain America, which had a lot more mixed reviews, and after that, I think people are starting to lose faith in Marvel in a little, so it might have not performed as well because of that, and also, these characters aren't as well known, so that also could have played into it. But I think, as a film, this film is a step in the right direction, so we will see if they can capitalize on that and just what they do now. So the next film, going to DC, we have Superman, which was released on July 11th. It grossed $606 million. The only film this year to get above, I believe, $500 million. And 2025 is actually the first year in, I don't remember exactly how long, I remember reading this a couple days ago. In a few years, it's going to be the first year where a superhero film hasn't grossed more than $700 million. But Superman is the first one in the DCU. We saw David Cornsweet taking on the iconic role of Superman with Rachel Brosnahan as Lois Lane, Nicholas Hoult taking on the iconic Lex Luthor, among some other very familiar faces like Nathan Fillion as Bill Merced, Anthony Kerrigan, and Eddie Gathegi. Superman, great film. I really enjoyed it. Superman is high on my list of like some of my favorite superheroes. So regardless of how the film was going to be, I was definitely going to watch it. I was not disappointed at all. It is a very James Gunn film. Obviously, he did direct it and write it. So if you're not a huge James Gunn fan, it might not be the film for you. But it still has a lot of great messages in the film, a lot of great action sequences, great performances. So even if you're not a huge James Gunn fan, I think there definitely are parts of the film that you will find that you enjoy. I thought it was a great starting point for the DCU, even though Creature Commandos technically started the DCU. This was the first film, and it was definitely a good starting point. And going forward, I think based on the first few projects for the DCU, it's looking like they're starting off strong. They know what they're doing. James Gunn has a great vision, I think, so I'm very excited to see how some of these earlier projects develop and expand the new universe for the DCU. The last major superhero film we saw released this year came just recently, a couple of weeks after Superman, Fantastic Four: First Steps, which was, I think, a highly anticipated movie. Got great reviews, very positive reviews. We saw Pedro Pascal, Vanessa Kirby, Evan Bosch-Bachrach, and Joseph Quinn in the starring roles as the First Family, with Julia Garner as the Silver Surfer, among some other great cast members as well. The film is set on a different Earth, a different universe, so a lot of people, I think, when this film was announced, and well, more when it was released, especially after the post-credit scene in Thunderbolts, which showed the Fantastic Four ship coming into the main MCU universe, a lot of people, I think, thought that this film was going to really set up Doomsday, and it did not, save for maybe the post-credit scene. I thought it was a pretty good film. It had a great retro vibe to it because it was set in like the 80s, 90s, something like that. It had a great feel to it. The 4 stars, great chemistry. I thought they played the characters really well. I think it was the most like comic accurate we've seen the characters in film for the most part. Their portrayals in ways that some of the characters in specific were developed, I really liked, and I think worked well. And it's some ways we haven't really seen them before, so it was a refreshing take on that. I think the one thing that hindered the film was the fact that it didn't really connect to anything, and at this point, so close to Doomsday, we were expecting and kind of wanted some more answers, especially after that post-credit scene in Thunderbolts. And I think that's part of the reason why the Fantastic Four had such a huge drop in its second weekend. Its first weekend, it did pretty well. It made about $217 million globally. Its second weekend, it dropped 80% domestically, and almost like 65%, I believe, globally in its second weekend. I think part of that was because word was getting out that it wasn't setting up at all for Doomsday, and I think that's kind of what a lot of people wanted and expected. So when people found out that wasn't the case, I think that's part of the reason why they didn't see it. Potentially why there was such a huge drop. I don't know for sure, but I feel like that definitely played into it. But overall, it was a good film. It was well made. It had a lot of great aspects to it. And overall, all the films this year, I thought had a lot going for them. Definitely steps in a more positive direction, especially for Marvel. For DC, Superman was the first film, so it doesn't really have anything to base off of necessarily. But especially for Marvel, with Thunderbolts and Fantastic Four, it's definitely a step in the right direction as far as well-made films, well-thought-out films, the formula they're using for the films. Captain America, exception to that, it just had a lot. Because it was a sequel to like multiple projects, I would say, and then taking Captain America, such an iconic character who's been in the MCU since basically almost day one, not really day one, but close enough, part of the original Avengers, and then having him, another character, take on that mantle. It just had a lot. There was a lot riding on the film, a lot of pressure going for the film, a lot at stake, and it didn't all pay off. I thought there were some parts of the film that were okay, could be redeemable, but overall, definitely a miss on that one. I was hoping for a lot more, especially having Harrison Ford there, who I love. It just kind of fell for me, and a lot of people, which was a little disappointing, but it's okay. Because Thunderbolts was great, Fantastic Four was a great film. A little disappointing I didn't really answer any questions or lead up to Doomsday since we're so close, especially after that post-credit scene. But it was a good film. I enjoyed it. A lot of people watched it, did too. So with those films, we're definitely on a more positive direction, and I'm very excited to see where we go moving forward. And then for the MCU, after Secret Wars, Kevin Feige wants to reset the whole universe, whole franchise, go back to a single universe, get rid of the multiverse, which I think that is a smart idea. The Arrowverse, for those who kept up with Arrowverse, I think for especially when they first started out the multiverse and introduced it in the Flash TV show, they handled it pretty well, I thought. I love The Flash is probably one of my, if not favorite, TV show. And they especially when they first introduced the Arrowverse, or the multiverse in the Flash, they handled it well. The MCU, there was a lot of potential, but they just didn't handle it well, I don't think. Especially, it might be harder in film because going over so many films, you have so many stories to tell, not as much time to tell them, so it might be a little harder to do that, but they just didn't really handle the multiverse well as they did with the Infinity Saga. And I think it was in part because they kind of rushed things. After they had so much success with the Infinity Saga, they tried to just duplicate that with the Multiverse Saga, hit the ground running, just project after project after project, not taking the time to develop good stories. And they had the potential, like, even a lot of films that didn't do well or flopped at the box office in the Multiverse Saga, some of them did have the potential to be great. Some of them did have stuff in them for great stories, great characters that, if handled in a better way or just in a different way, could have developed into something great. And they just missed the mark on a lot of it, which was pretty disappointing. So going forward with Marvel, the next few projects... so with Marvel and DC, we won't see another superhero movie until about a year from now in July of 2026. So for Marvel, we will see Spider-Man Brand New Day on July 31st, 2026, followed by Avengers Doomsday in December, and then Secret Wars in December of 2027. So Spider-Man Brand New Day is basically a reset for Spider-Man in the MCU. After No Way Home, no one knows who he is now. So it's going to be very interesting to see those dynamics with some of the returning characters like Zendaya, Jacob Batalon, who were his closest friends and allies in those other 3 films in the MCU. And then we're also seeing some other characters from previous Marvel projects, as well as some new actors who haven't been announced in as what character they're playing. So it's going to be very interesting to see. And since it is the last film before Doomsday and Secret Wars, it's also going to be interesting to see if we get any more answers as to a setup for Doomsday. Because I don't know if Spider-Man was even announced for Doomsday. I don't know, last time I looked, he wasn't, so I don't know if he has been since then. I haven't really been keeping up with that. But even if he is, no one knows. And I know at one point Tom Holland wasn't sure because he was filming, or starting to film Brand New Day, and also in the middle of filming for The Odyssey. So, I don't know. I know at that point he was trying to see if he could get his schedule to work out for Doomsday. So, but I don't know if it was ever announced that he's actually going to be in Doomsday. So I've been looking into that. But whether he is or not, it's going to be interesting to see if we get any more answers or a setup, maybe another post-credit scene. Because the only thing we've had that shows Doctor Doom is the post-credit scene for Fantastic Four, which was rumored months before Fantastic Four came out, and we did get to see it. We didn't see who Doctor Doom was. We didn't see his face, but we saw the back of him. We saw the mask, so we know it is Doctor Doom. But they are in that alternate universe, so we still don't know how they're going to get to the main universe. Because I know Kevin Feige also said that, and I don't, maybe this wasn't true, but he did say that the ship in the Thunderbolts post-credit scene wasn't the same team of the Fantastic Four. That was in First Steps. So maybe that isn't true. I don't know. Maybe that was just a rumor that didn't turn out to be anything. But regardless, Doctor Doom, we saw in that other universe, so there's still the question of how he gets to the main universe. But it's also the multiverse saga, so maybe things will come together, and then culminating in Secret Wars, going back to that single universe, maybe something will happen that causes the multiverse to be destroyed, and we just have the single universe. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But I'm excited. Spider-Man Brand New Day, very highly anticipated. Doomsday, a lot of people right now are saying that they aren't excited for it, or that it's going to flop. I think the big part of that is because everyone knows, and Marvel even said that they do not have a finished script. They are filming without a finished script. A lot of the actors don't even know if they filmed all their scenes because the script is not finished yet. Alan Cummings, who plays Nightcrawler in some of the original X-Men, or X2, is back for this film. He said in an interview that he filmed in isolation with just green screens and tennis balls of other characters, and he had no idea what he was filming or who he was even with. So I think production at Doomsday right now is kind of a mess. So we'll see. Hopefully it comes together. I'm personally, I love Doctor Doom. He's such a great character, such an iconic character. So hopefully they don't mess Doctor Doom up. And hopefully it doesn't turn out to be a mess. Hopefully it turns out to be at least a decent movie. After the successful filmmaking perspectives from Fantastic Four and Thunderbolts, and then hopefully with the running of the first 3 Spider-Man movies, hopefully Brand New Day is just as good. And so hopefully Doomsday and Secret Wars end up following in those footsteps and have those formulas of being good classic Marvel movies. So hopefully we will not be disappointed next year and in 2027. And then beyond that with the reset of the MCU. For the DCU, the next film is Supergirl, which will release in June 2026, and then Clayface in September of next year as well. Then they also have in development Authority, The Brave and the Bold, Swamp Thing, and an untitled Wonder Woman film, which keeps getting moved around in the slate of films. So we'll see if that actually. None of those films beyond Clayface have release dates yet, but they are in different stages of development. So there's a lot of projects that are in development for the DCUs, a lot of interesting projects that I'm excited about. So we'll see. Supergirl, we've got some behind the scenes pictures over the past month or two. So a lot of people are excited for it. I'm excited to see what they do, how the character is gonna be after we saw her little cameo at the end of the Superman film. So I'm excited. One thing with DC, James Gunn doesn't want to move on, like start production on a project until a script is finished and he likes it, the director likes it, Peter Safran likes it, Warner Bros. Likes it. So I think that is a great approach, as opposed to, right now with Marvel, filming like 60% of the film without having a finished script. Having the finished scripts and the approach James Gunn is taking, I think he knows what he's doing, and I am excited to see what happens with some of these first projects and how the universe expands, because he really knows what he's doing. He has great knowledge of superheroes, so definitely behind him 100%. Also, DCU, the first few projects he's done have been. The formula he's using is working really well compared to some of the Marvel, especially present. Because with Creature Commandos, each project is standalone, but also has these little connections with each project to expand the universe and move forward. But you don't really have to watch a certain one necessarily to kind of know what's going on. And it definitely helps too, but if you watch like Peacemaker season 2 before Superman, it's a continuation of Superman, and there's definitely things you wouldn't get, but it's still, you wouldn't know the overall aspect of what's going on. Creature Commandos started off, and then we saw some of those characters portrayed in live action in the Superman movie. We saw some characters from Superman in Peacemaker. So all the projects are connecting, but the stories are standalone. So just the approach that they're taking with these first few projects, and hopefully continue in the same direction moving forward. It's definitely a bright future for DC, and I'm definitely looking forward to seeing where they go from here and some of the future projects. So, the question of superhero fatigue: is there superhero fatigue? Are they just rushing projects? I don't know. I think that, like a year ago, I think that my answer probably would have been different. I would have said that I don't know if they're superhero fatigue. I think they just need to get back to their old roots of what made the beginning, especially Marvel. What made some of the earlier films so great and so enjoyable for people, and why they did so well and were so successful. This year, after getting some films that have been more successful, I honestly don't know if it is super fatigue. I am kind of leaning more towards maybe it is, because we did have Thunderbolts, which was the formula they used was better, closer to the original films. It felt more like those. Definitely more successful as a film. Fantastic Four, similar answer. I think it's a mix of superhero fatigue and Mm, not because Thunderbolts. I think one, you have a group of characters who aren't necessarily as well known, so maybe that also played into it. So there's definitely, I think there's still, even to this point, there's still multiple factors. It's not just a yes or no answer. Because with Superman, it's doing pretty well. So super films still have the potential. I think that maybe it's more Marvel at this point. We've had so many films, almost 40, since the beginning of the MCU back in 2008. So maybe it's more of just having so many films, so much development. We're getting closer to the end of the multiverse saga with no answers about how we're getting into this new Avengers movie, how Doctor Doom is getting introduced. So I think people are kind of just frustrated with how Marvel is progressing currently with their films leading up to some huge releases in the next year or two. So I think that's more of the case than... So I don't think it's total superhero fatigue. It's just where we're at in the universe, where we're at in the franchise, where we're at in the story, some unanswered questions. And I think it's more just frustration for some people of not knowing where it's headed, as opposed to maybe fatigue of of getting too much content. So I think it's definitely I think it's a mix of both. But I'd definitely be excited to see hear what you think. Definitely interested in that. If you think it's super fatigue for getting too many projects, which projects this year you liked, let me know. Definitely curious about your opinions as well. So, 4 releases this year between Captain America, Thunderbolts, Superman, Fantastic Four. I'm I think personally, I'm more excited with how DC is currently developing, especially because they're a newer franchise, and seeing kind of a little more of how they build up the franchise moving forward. Some of their upcoming projects I'm very excited for. So, with Marvel, I think a lot of people are excited for Spider-Man. I'm no exception. Hopefully Avengers, Doomsday, and Secret Wars do pan out. They bring back a lot of old cast members from different franchises throughout Marvel's history, so they definitely have the potential to be some of the biggest films ever made. Hopefully they do not disappoint. I'm still excited for them, and hopefully a lot of people are too. Superhero fatigue, like we covered, there's a lot of factors. I don't think it's just a yes or no question. It's been a question. It's been on the table for a few years. It's not just. I don't think it's just a yes or no question. There's definitely other factors that go into it. So it's not just you're not just gonna get a yes or no even from me. But it definitely is a factor into some of the movies. But there's also other factors that go into whether or not a movie is successful or not as well. I definitely like to know what you think about some of these movies, what you're interested or excited for in the Marvel and DC going forward, some of the future projects that you really want to see what you're really excited about, some previous projects that you liked or even didn't like, and why you liked or didn't like them. And if you liked today's episode, please like it. Feel free to comment about any thoughts you had on today's episode, and subscribe to the channel, as well as following us on social media. Instagram, we're at Cinema Safari Podcast. Twitter, Cinema Safari 25. And thank you all for watching today's episode. We will see you all next week.